All right. Oh, look at that. We're starting off with a $5 super chat. I guess I'll have to get that answered before I even get into the disclaimers. How are we doing on focus here? It looks like I'm out of focus. Let's see. Let's fix that. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's good. I had a hard time getting the camera set up today. So let's see what law of the minimum with a $5 super chat to start us off. Thank you so much. He says, how will you feed your quail if you have no access to store-bought food or feed and you have to make your own? Boy, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but if it does happen, boy, I'm going to have to strap for stuff and try to figure out how to do it because, I don't know. I think I've got a, hang on a second. I think I got a camera problem here. Let's adjust a few settings and see if that helps. Does that help? No, I've got problems going on here, and I can't figure out how to get it fixed. Give me a second here, guys. I'm sorry. You're gonna look at my shirt for a minute here. Trying to work this thing backwards. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. Okay, give me a minute here. Let's see. What am I at? Good. All right, now let's try. See if that's a little bit better. I feel like I'm out of focus, but I cannot figure out why it will not focus on me for some reason. Maybe my shutter speed's a little low. Sorry, guys. I got to adjust a few things here. That doesn't seem to be much better. I don't know what's going on. We may just have to deal with poor camera quality tonight. I don't know why. Maybe it'll get better. Hopefully it will get better. But okay, so back to if I don't have store-bought food, I guess I would have to get into growing some fodder for them. Barley, wheat, some of those kinds of things, catching insects for them. I really don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. Sorry, law of the minimum. I can't give you a definite answer on exactly how to do that. Wish I did. Wish I knew. Did my autofocus turn off? Let me check my lens. I feel like I think I may have. Oh, I can't get it to shift either way. No, it should be on autofocus. Why is it not focusing? I don't know why I'm so out of focus. I can't figure it out. Oh, well. I guess we'll just have to deal with it because I cannot get it figured out. But seems like, I don't know if it's like a soft image to anybody else. But hey, let me get the disclaimers out of the way. Weekly live broadcast. We usually do this Thursday evening, 7 o'clock Central Time. I don't really have a topic planned out for you guys. It's just a kind of an opportunity to ask me. There we go. Adjust that a little bit. Maybe that'll help. It's just an opportunity for you guys to ask me questions and me interact with you. I do my best to answer all of the questions, all the comments anyway, respond to all the comments that come in during the chat, during the live broadcast itself. The only things I ask, be family friendly, don't be hateful, don't call people names, no cussing, any of that kind of stuff. Just keep it friendly, keep it polite. We can disagree, we can have debates without being hateful and rude and all that kind of stuff about it. So, all right, let's get into it then. Backyard Shenanigans says, proud to say the first time hatching quail and got 100% hatch rate, only to lose 4 babies to drowning in the incubator water reservoir, but I fixed this problem and it won't happen again. Man, that's fantastic. 100% hatch rate. Good job. That is a well done hatch rate for sure. Sorry to hear that you lost a few of them, but sounds like your hatch rate was great. Let me turn this light up a little bit. Maybe that's the problem or how I'm having here. I can't, it's just driving me crazy. We'll see if that brighter light will help it focus on me a little bit better. I don't know why. It just looks like it's a soft image. It's like, it looks bad to me. But anyway, I guess I'll just have to quit paying attention to it because it is distracting me for sure. All right. Yeah, gotta love tech. That's what Jeff says. Yeah, no kidding. It's great when it works, but when things don't work, it drives me crazy. But all right, Backyard Shenanigans also says you can order feed online and ship right to your house. Also, they can eat most bugs, which can keep them from which you can get from a pet store, crickets, grasshoppers, flies, waxworms, spikeworms, etc. That is true. You would need to add some grit if you're feeding them like live insects and things like that, but that's not that big of a deal either. So Jeff from Central Missouri, hello to you. Sage and Stone Homestead says, hey, any reason quail would stop laying over the summer. Heat affect them much. They do take breaks from laying every great once in a while for whatever reason. Most of the time, light is the number one thing. The amount of light that they're getting, whether that, over 14 hours, you need over 14 hours in order to give them a good, to have them lay consistently. But assuming you're getting that, because it is summertime here, let me turn that frame rate down a little bit. That may be the problem I'm running into. Right there. I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. This is just driving me crazy. Maybe that's a little. I don't think it's any better. I don't know what's going on, why it looks so bad, but maybe it's my internet connection. It can't upload in a good quality. Maybe it doesn't look that bad to you. Maybe it's the internet connection. I'm just getting a poor image on my side. I don't know. Anyway, quit laying over the summertime. Light is the number one factor. 14 hours a day of light should keep them laying consistently. The other factors are stress factors. So they could be molting. Sometimes when they're molting, especially, they do tend to stop laying, at least for a little while until they grow back. So if they look kind of scruffy right now, they may be molting. That's probably one reason. Those are the only things I can think of. And then every once in a while, they just take a break from laying for whatever reason. You just don't even know. But they usually kick back up pretty quick. So you're probably not looking at more than maybe a week, 2 at the most, I would say, and they'll start laying again. All right, good afternoon to you, Big Mike. And Whiskey Tango Farms is here. Says hello, everyone, and hi, Chris. Hello to you. Owen Miller, I'm doing well, thank you. Hopefully you are too. And Jeff says, gotta love tech. Yep, we already said that one. But yeah, tech. I don't know. I have the worst problems with trying to get streaming set up. I need to get a different setup, buy a new cable. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe it's the cable, but because it looks fine on the camera screen, it looks terrible on the screen in front of me. But I don't know. I don't know how to fix it. So somebody let me know. Does it look bad to you guys? Are we still connected? Because I haven't seen a chat come through in a little while. Anybody? Nobody? Did I lose connection? Oh my goodness, there's a whole bunch of them. Never mind. I don't know what was going on there. The chat was all okay. Good. Okay, I've got a bunch of chats now. Okay, gotta love tech. There we go. Big Mike says, had Quail sick and lost 25. Figured out that they had a runny nose. Have them tiling for a week. All better now. Have them tiling. I don't know what that means. Tiling for a week. All better now. Ever heard of that? I've heard of, let's see, Quail, you lost 25 of them. They had a runny nose. I've heard of things like that happening. I can't remember what causes that. But there is an illness that can go around for sure. That, the runny nose kind of thing can be a symptom of. Which one is it though? I'd have to look back at notes. I can't remember what it is. You may have to re-explain that. I don't know what Tylan is. Tylan. I'm not sure. Here, I can do a Google search for it, I suppose. Looks like it is a chewy handles arrest. Okay, vet RX. So oral granules. Okay, so it's some kind of medication. Back to things. So yeah, that makes sense why that would fix it. Jasmine says, hello, Mr. Chris, fellow Southwest Missourian here. Good to see you, Jasmine. Thanks for joining. Chad, good evening from Montana. Is that MN? Is that Montana? I think it is. How are you doing? I'm doing well, thank you. Katrina says, hi from Gilroy, California. Can you please go into how to do an egg topsy and what the fetus would look like for each issue? Too much heat, not enough heat, any other issues for those that don't hatch? I don't know that there's a big difference between, what the embryo would look like at, if there's too much heat or not enough heat or any of those kinds of things. Because they either stop developing at certain stages for whatever reason. And so there's not like, you can't really just look at the egg, the embryo inside, or the fetus as you call it, and just say, well, that's because there was too much heat or there was not enough heat or one of those kinds of things. Heat's going to be your biggest obstacle though, for sure. The things I would think about with not enough heat would be no or very little development of the embryos themselves. So if you open the eggs up and there's just nothing in there that developed, that's probably an indicator of either no fertility in your egg or too low of heat in your incubator. Whereas if you open it up and they're pretty much developed, then that could be an indicator that the heat was a little bit low as well, or it could be an indicator that the heat was too hot. And really the same thing holds true. If the heat's too hot, you may not get development out of them either. So, it's really hard to tell from that standpoint, but heat is definitely probably the biggest thing that you're, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little scattered here. Heat's probably the biggest thing that determines whether you're going to have a good hatch rate or not. So what I would recommend is getting a couple of calibrated non-digital thermometers. Make sure they'll go down low enough, down to 0, up to over 100, and put them in your incubator. Run your incubator without anything in it, just the thermometers, and check those and see what they're reading the temperature as compared to your thermostat on your incubator itself. That's a great way to determine if you're having an issue with your heat or not. Now, a good indicator that you may have too low of temperature in there is if you start having a bunch of birds that are hatching really, really late, or with like leg problems and some of those kinds of things. That's usually a low temperature issue in your incubator, whereas high temperature usually just you don't get much of a hatch rate at all. So those are a couple of things to kind of look for. As far as egg topsies, what I'm mostly checking for if I'm doing that is just to see if I had fertile eggs or not, just to see if I had any development in the eggs or not. And if I do have birds that are developing, in the egg but not hatching, that's when I go back to check the thermometers in the incubator and check to make sure my incubator temperature is reading accurately. I hope that makes sense, and hopefully that answers that for you. Hey, Moon Outdoors from Ohio, good to see you. Will Lothridge says, good evening, Chris. It's been a while since I've been able to catch the live. Well, thanks for joining tonight. I appreciate it. Big D says, Sage, my quail stopped laying. I figured because they were sick. Well, that could definitely be the issue too, but it's not always. I mean, I don't really have issues with sick birds really ever. And sometimes they just take a break for whatever reason, but that's a good thing to watch out for. Like Big Mike says, it may be, keep an eye on your birds. Make sure you don't notice any kind of illness issues. They don't stop eating or drinking or any of those kinds of things, because that could be a sign that there is something else wrong. Everyday Oil says, hello, Chris, Sacramento, California in the house with you. I'm not watching, just listening while I house paint. So blurry doesn't bother me. Well, good. Thank you. Good day to you, Basti. Is it Basti? I think it is Basti Malacca from Australia. Where are we at? Jay Moore says 4 dead hens due to males. So it was freezer camp for some males. Starting again with eggs on lockdown. Give the girls hidey holes. Yeah, you can get that happen occasionally, especially if you have too many roosters. You really don't want to have more than one rooster for every about 5 hens. If you have less than 5 hens for every one rooster, if you've got like 3 hens to every rooster or 2 hens to every rooster, then yeah, you can definitely get some issues with, they usually don't kill them, but what they usually do is end up scalping them completely bald. You may have little wounds on the back of their heads, those kinds of things. If you've got birds that are killing them, it's probably limited to 1 or 2 birds, but your best bet on that situation is definitely freezer camp. Get that out of your breeding pool so you don't have to breed that. Hola to you, Disc Farmer. He says hola and hello, just in case I guess I didn't know what hola meant. Or I guess I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. But anyway, you get it. Jan says, hey, Chris, it's Jan from Massachusetts, I think it is. I'm interested in the quail food too. Yeah, for natural quail food. Boy, that's a tough one. I'm going to have to do some research on that. I've had some people ask lots of questions about it. I just don't have a good solution for a natural quail food because their diets really need to be very varied. And they're omnivores. They eat insects, they eat grains in the wild. So those would be kind of the things you would need to mix in. But you need to make sure that you're getting like the calcium levels right, the thiamine levels right, all that kind of stuff. So I need to look into that just a little bit. Protein levels, all that kind of thing. I'll see if I'll make a note of that somewhere here. I better write it down or I'm going to completely forget about it. So I don't have a pen. I can't believe I don't have a pen here. I got something I can make a note on. Give me a second here. There we go. See what I can do. I'll try to do some research on that and find a good answer. Honestly, if I had to feed my quail naturally, I probably wouldn't have quail because I just don't have time. I mean, I've got so much going on right now, and I just cannot keep up with trying to grow, food for my birds. But that's just me. I'll see if I can find an answer for that. Jesse says, good evening, everyone. I'm finally catching the show live. Looking forward to meeting you at QuailCon. I'm looking forward to it too. We just had a call about it today and kind of finalized some plans. So we're looking looking good. Everything's going as planned. There's only 22 tickets left, so if you want a ticket, you better jump in and get it pretty quick. Hey, let's see. Letty Torres says hello from Del Rio, Texas. Hello to you. Jasmine says, I had a crazy fluke with my little giant incubator, which I've had for a while with great hatches. 2 nights ago, eggs in lockdown, thermostat spazzed, and the temperature reached 105 degrees. You know, that's happened to me. It actually got worse than that for me. It got up to like 125 degrees, cooked all my eggs in the incubator. I contacted Miller Manufacturing, who makes Little Giant, and they were great. Their customer service was fantastic. They sent me a brand new thermostat. Like, didn't even ask me how long I'd had the incubator, nothing. Just sent me a brand new thermostat. So if you continue to have problems with it, contact them for sure. One thing I would caution you about is, now you said the other night, I think, 2 nights ago. So I'm guessing it happened at night. So this probably isn't the issue. But, you know, I once, my incubator, I look over here. You guys can't see over there, but my incubator sits right there under a window. And I had the shades open on the window. So in the afternoon, the sun was coming through the window and it was heating that incubator up. It wasn't the thermostat doing it. It was the sun coming through the window and heating the incubator up. And I was getting terrible hatch rates for a while until I figured that out, closed that blind, and then boom, great hatch rates again. So just make sure it's not something external that's causing that issue. But if it does keep up, and if it's just hitting 105 and then dropping back down, that's probably not that big of a deal. 105 is a little high, but it's not that high that if it's just there for temporarily, that it's going to cause huge issues. Jesse says, let's all hit the thumbs up. 30 watching, only 7 likes. Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate that. And hello to you, Laura. Jan says, you look fine. Well, thank you. It must be on my end only. Letty says, should I turn the light off at night on my quail so they can live a little longer and not lay too many eggs? Well, it's up to you. I don't know that laying eggs really shortens their lifespan. It shortens probably their egg laying lifespan. You know, it's always been said that hens are born with just a certain number of eggs they're going to lay in their lifetime. So, you know, let's assume for easy math, that's 100 eggs. If they're laying an egg a day, they're only going to lay eggs for 100 days. So if you keep the lights on them all the time, then yeah, that's going to shorten maybe their egg laying lifespan. But I don't know that it does any long-term damage to them. What I'm assuming is you're talking about, should you shut the lights off after 14 hours or sooner to get them to stop laying eggs so that they'll live longer? Now, you probably don't want to leave the lights on 24 hours a day. I think they do need a period of darkness. You know, I think I would go crazy if the lights were on 24 hours a day, and I think the animals are kind of that way too. So I would definitely shut them off at night. If you don't have a timer, you know, just buy a little timer you plug into the wall if they're electric lights that you plug in, and you can set that to go off at a certain time and come on at a certain time, so you don't have to worry about manually going out and turning the lights on and off. And they're cheap, like $4 or $5. All right, Jasmine says, had 47 2-term eggs, 22 pipped at the same time of overheat. I think it killed all those. I got 14 babies as of this morning, but no more. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, that definitely may be the problem. Like I said, if you know, especially when you're done with this hatch, run it for a little while and monitor it. And if you continue to have problems with it, definitely contact Miller Manufacturing. Their customer service was fantastic. Sage and Stone says, our quail may need us to turn on their light. We have light from about 6 a.m. to 7:30, so we're getting just under 14 hours a day of light. Molt is an excellent hypothesis. We haven't gone through a molt. Yeah, it very well could be. Like I said, what you're going to see is probably just a little bit of molting on the birds whenever they, molting. You're going to see them look a little scruffy, you know, just kind of, just look like they're kind of just puffing their feathers out and stuff. Maybe see some little bald patches on them here and there. That's a good sign that they're molting. Give them a couple of weeks, they'll get over it, and they'll start laying again. So 6 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., that's like 13 and a half hours. That's probably enough light. You can add a light if you're worried about it, and you want to ensure they're getting enough light, but I don't know that that's really the issue. What I would, if it was light, what you'd probably be getting is sporadic egg laying. So you'd get like say you have 10 birds, instead of 10 eggs a day, you might get like 6 one day, 4 the next, 8 the next day, 3 the next, 2, it'd be sporadic egg laying if it was light related. All right. Right out here. Janali Low, I think it is. Janali, I may be pronouncing it completely wrong. It says, hey, Chris, my elementary schooler loves watching videos with me. Your rabbit and quail videos are the top request. Well, awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Tell him or her, I don't know which one it is, that I said thank you, and I appreciate that. Jasmine says, I pulled 3 that I had feeling had died and did an autopsy. Definitely died from the heat. Yeah, that very well. I mean, that sounds like it, Jasmine, for sure. I'm sorry to hear that. All right. Yeah, everybody's saying they're still here. That's when I was trying to figure out the chat. I don't know. There's a little down arrow key. I don't know that I ever pushed that. Let me see. I pushed it that time. And anyway, there was like no chats. It must be an internet connection issue on my part. It's probably feeding me bad video feed. Anyway, you guys don't care about that. Let's get back to it. Laura says, I have 8 females and 1 male. There's 1 female. The male beats up all the time. I've kept her separated, but each time I let her loose, she gets beat up. Any suggestions? Yeah, eat the male. Get a different rooster. That's what I would do. I mean, that sounds brutal and cold-hearted, I know, but yeah, that's kind of what I would do. Either that or you can just wait it out. Usually, as the males get a little bit older, they'll start to calm down and it won't be as big of an issue. But if he's doing a lot of damage to her, that's a tricky situation. Either that or you could just remove her from the flock completely, and then maybe he'll calm down. And I don't know, if you have extra roosters on hand that you can replace. I don't know how many roosters you have right now. So if it was me, what I would probably do is just, like I said, eat the bird, eat the one that's being brutal to that one hen for whatever reason. I might give him a couple of days, see if he calms down after a couple of days. But if not, then yeah, I would just put him in the freezer and replace him with a different rooster if I could. Moon Outdoors says that's hard to hear. Yeah, that is. Talking to Jasmine. Hey, Terry from Coturnic's Corners here. Hello to you, Terry. Good to see you. He says, hey, Chris and everyone. Okay, so T-Disc Farmer says, yeah, Tylen 50 or Tylen 200, it's an antibiotic. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that. So thank you for clarifying. Jennifer Herard, I think it is, actually says, evening from Buffalo, New York. I have a question about bunnies. I had a mama bunny have babies in April, and we thought we got out all the male bunnies and was told if she mates with her boy bunny she had. Oh, there's more. That they may have problems and health problems. Is that true? Should a mother bunny not mate with her babies later on? No, it's fine. It's actually a very common practice. It's called line breeding. And what rabbit breeders do is they pick out the best rabbits that they have. And a lot of times that's like they'll have a great rabbit right here, a good breeder rabbit. They'll breed that. And then they'll pick out the best looking rabbits that they can, the ones that have the best traits, whatever traits they're looking for from the offspring, and then breed that back to the mother or breed it back to the father if it's a doe. And it's a perfectly acceptable. You really want to avoid breeding brother and sister together, but siblings or daughter to father or son to mother is fine. You can do that, and you're not going to have any problems with that. What you're going to see is that you probably get some really you're going to have all the good traits of the mother rabbit and the baby rabbit kind of accentuated in the offspring of those. You may get some bad traits accentuated as too. It can happen, but it's not. You're not going to get like rabbits that have 3 eyes or any of that kind of trait. It's not going to be any big problems. You're probably going to end up with pretty good results from that. So it's a perfectly acceptable process perfectly acceptable practice. That's what I was looking for. So yeah, you don't have to worry about it. Jay Moore says, can you use bird doxycycline for respiratory disease if they get sick? Let's see. I don't know, honestly. Let's see. Doxycycline for chickens. It is, what's it used to treat? I got to find out. Oh, there's the answer right there. Although doxycycline is often used to treat avian infection diseases such as colobacillosis, salmonellosis. It doesn't sound like a staphylococcus. It sounds like more like an antibiotic, not a respiratory. I'm not real familiar with that drug, but it does. What I'm reading of it sounds like it's more treating things like staph bacteria infections and those kinds of things, not respiratory issues with birds. But maybe for respiratory issues, I don't know. I don't have any problems. I've never had really any problems with my birds. So I don't have to, a great working knowledge of like what drugs to use to treat different illnesses in birds because I've never had any issues with them really. I don't know if Terry might have some more information on how to treat like respiratory issues. I know he's in here. Whiskey Tango Farms is in here. They may be able to give some information on that, but I'm kind of, I don't have it right at my fingertips. I've read and I've studied that stuff, but I've never had the issue, so I've never had to put it into practice. All right. Jennifer says that they may have, oh, I already read that. Gerald says, wire size for floor on side, please. Hope all is good. Well, are we talking wire size for rabbit cages or for quail? The wire size for the floor and the sides, please. For quail, I go with 1/4-inch hardware cloth. Wait, is it 1/4-inch or 1/2 inch? I always forget now. I think it's 1/2-inch hardware cloth, actually. I just do that all the way around. It's fine for the quail. It works just great. For the rabbits, I use 1-inch, 1/2 by 1-inch square wiring for the floor. And the sides, you can go a little bit bigger wire. You don't need that small a wire. You just want something fairly small on the bottom so you don't have problems with their feet. Now, it's a big, make sure you use a wide gauge wire on rabbits. Something like a 16 or a 14 if you can get it, so you don't have feet problems. The sides can be a bigger gauge, or not a bigger gauge, a bigger square. Like you can go with 1-inch by 1-inch or 1-inch by 2-inch even on the sides. Now you will want to run some of that 1-inch by 1/2-inch wire around the bottom up about 2 inches or so. So in your breeder cages for your does, so you don't have babies squirming out the side of the wire. But the rest of it, it's a lot cheaper. So you can use that for the sides and the roof. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, Laura says, also, I'm trying to brood my fertilized eggs and ask my friend who had silkies to brood them. If this is successful, can quails and silkies coexist in the same coop? Good question. I mean, they might be able to. I've never tried it, though. So I can't really tell you that, yeah, it'll work or no, it won't work. The thing I would be concerned about is that now if the silkie is brooding them or like hatching them out, you probably won't run into any issues. But what I would worry about is that chickens are vicious. So they will eat just about anything that is smaller than them. And I would be a little bit worried about them trying to eat those baby quail. But, that would be the other chickens probably. But, people have done it before, so try it out and see how it works. All right, Law of the Minimum with a $5 super chat says, I had my little giant incubator fail to heat. They are sending me the electronics. Have you had this problem? How often? And thanks. I had my little giant incubator. I was talking about this just a little bit ago. The thermostat went crazy and it was overheating. It was going way up. I'm like 120 degrees, 130 degrees. And I called them. They sent me the new thermostat. I mean, like within days. It didn't take very long at all. Didn't ask me how long I'd had it. Nothing. Just sent me a new thermostat. It was super easy to put in. I haven't had a problem since then. And that's been, I don't know, 3 years ago. I mean, it's been a while. All right, Gerald says, how many days in the brooder? Well, that depends on a few things. You leave them in the brooder until they're ready to come out. That's usually going to be 2.5 to 3 weeks, somewhere right around in there, assuming your weather outside's pretty good. Now, if it's the middle of winter and it's 10 degrees outside, you're probably going to need to leave them in there just a little bit longer, but you want to leave them in there until they're acclimated to the heat, to the temperatures outside. Usually they start feathering out. You really want to keep them at about 100 degrees, 95 to 100 degrees, where the heat lamp is anyway, not the whole brooder. You give them put the heat lamps on one side so there's a gradient. They can get comfortable, maybe 100 degrees under the heat lamp, but it may be only 90 degrees on the other side of the brooder, so they can get kind of comfortable. But usually you're going to have they're going to feather out in about 2 weeks, roughly. Sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later, but roughly 2 weeks. And once they feather out, you can really start reducing the temperature. Once they're fully feathered out, just go down 5 or 10 degrees at the most and watch your birds. If they're all crowding up as close as they can get under the heat lamp, then they're a little too cold. You need to bump that temperature up just a little bit. But if they're all just spread out and wandering around, it's fine. Leave them there for a couple of days, drop it down another 5 or 10 degrees. If it's, summertime and the temperatures outside are in the 80s, usually I can move them out by 2.5 to 3 weeks old. But if it's wintertime or fall and the temperatures are getting down in the 30s or 40s maybe, I'm going to leave them in there just a little bit longer until I can get them used to, at least 50-degree temperatures. hopefully that helps, but it is a little bit different. Moon Outdoors says to Jennifer that is fine. It's called line breeding. Oh, we're talking about the rabbits. Yeah, you're right. Charles D says, hey, Chris, how you doing? Thank you for your videos. I'm doing well, thank you. Hopefully you are too. Yep, Moon, I agree, no siblings. Katrina says, if an egg was in the incubator until just before lockdown and does not have the development, lights up like a light bulb when candled, can you tell if it was fertilized at that point? I've never cracked one open, I don't think, at that point, and really examined it closely to see if you could tell if it was fertilized or not. I don't know if I'd want to. I just toss those out. I would lean towards not being fertilized. I think well, you know what? You may be able to crack it open actually and see if there's any kind of blood spots or any of that kind of stuff in there. That'd be a sure sign that it was fertilized and started to develop and then just didn't for whatever reason. But other than that, I don't know if you can still see the bullseye ring around the yolk, and I don't know that you'd want to. It's probably going to smell pretty bad. So, yeah, I just toss them out. I kind of lean towards those being non-fertilized to begin with, but that's not always the case, but it's probably a pretty good bet. All right. Moon Outdoors also says father to female and mother to male is fine. Yep, I agree. Backyard Shenanigans says, excuse me, I got to get a drink here. I got sucked a piece of dust down or something. How are we doing on time? 30 minutes in already. My goodness, it flies. Backyard Shenanigans says, can quail lay 2 eggs in one day? We have 6 females, and I know that's all I have, but 2 days ago we got back to back with 8 eggs. Yeah, they don't necessarily, yes, they can lay 2 eggs in one day. It's not common, it's going to happen, but they lay on a cycle, and it's probably not like 24 hours. It's probably more like, 14, 16 hours, something like that. So it's possible that they laid one early morning, one late evening, or one, middle of the night and one the next morning, maybe mid-morning, midday. It's definitely possible that can happen. You're not going to get that on a regular basis, but at the peak of egg laying, yeah, they can definitely, they've always got eggs working through their cycle in different stages of development. So if you've ever processed hens, you'll find eggs inside of them as you're processing them sometimes. And it's very common. Yeah, there, Katrina says 18 hours is their cycle. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's exactly 18 hours, but that's probably a pretty good bet. Backyard Shenanigans says, and now back to only 6 eggs a day now, which is my normal amount. Yep, that's probably what you're going to expect most of the time. Boasty, I think it is, says, how big is your quail pen that you have outdoors under the tree in your video? Well, I have 2 of them out there. I think they're both pretty close to the same size. It's 6 feet long by 3 feet wide by, 18 inches tall or something like that. The actual part that the birds, live in is, and it's got legs on it to raise it up, which I don't know what, they're like 3.5 feet or something. So the bottom of the quail hutch hits me right about there. So that makes it easy to get in and out of, but I think they're both 6 by 3. One of them may be 8 by 3. Now that I think about it, I don't remember. I'd have to go out and measure it, but that that gives me plenty of room to, comfortably house at least 24 birds in. I've actually had, 35 to 40 birds in there before, and it's not too crowded really. Especially younger birds. Bob says, I have 17 jumbos in the hutch and lots of cucumbers on the vines. How many cucumbers can I put in the hutch? And for how many days in a row? Can they overeat them and get sick or die? Yeah, I would worry a little bit. Cucumbers are really high in water content and fiber, so I would worry about it giving them diarrhea. I don't know that I'd go over just a couple every couple of days, honestly. I threw a tomato in there the other day because it had a big hornworm on it, and it was chewing on the tomato, so I just threw the whole tomato in there, and it wasn't a very big tomato, but it disappeared. And the next day it was gone. And so, but I don't think I'd do that every single day. That's just a little too much for him. Verna says, thumbs up, people. Show Chris your appreciation. Thank you, Verna. I appreciate that. Big D says, Jay Moore, I think I read that you can research it to be sure. I give mine Tylodox. This channel is a big help with quail and rabbits for sure. Well, thank you for the kind comments there, Big Mike. And thanks for helping out with the recommendations there. All right. Jay Moore says, I made pickles from extra cukes. Oh my goodness. It's that time of year right now where the garden is just in full productions. So it's it's like we're picking stuff every day. I've made I don't know, jars of cucumber pickles. Some of them spicy, some of them just regular dill. The last 2 nights I've been canning tomatoes, so I can do 7 quarts in my canner. So I got home from work night before last and went out and picked all the tomatoes out of the garden and came in with 2 big buckets full of tomatoes, some cucumbers and some okra that'll go into pickles. I haven't pickled them yet. And canned all those up that night, 7 quarts, not all of them, canned 7 quarts of them that night, and then came home last night, went out and picked some more from the garden. Didn't get as much, yesterday, but still got some tomatoes in. Canned 7 more quarts of tomatoes last night, but had 2 jars break, so I only got 5 quarts out of it last night. But still, it's just been nonstop, trying to get that stuff preserved because it doesn't last very long, and it's way more than we can eat fresh for sure. All right. Charles says, what rabbit feed is best to use that won't be so powdery? Oh boy, I can't give you a specific brand because I use some from a local feed mill or a feed store anyway. They get it. It's a local Missouri, feed mill that provides it for them. I can't remember the name of it even, honestly, but you're not going to be able to find that everywhere. So, I would say you're just going to have to, you are going to get some powdery stuff in the bottom of your feed sack no matter what. But if you're having, huge problems with it, talk to your feed store and let them know. And see if they can get you maybe a different kind in. You're just going to have to kind of experiment a little bit and see what you can get. But yeah, I'm sorry I can't give you a specific brand, but that's kind of, I don't have that issue with mine, but it is, again, specific only. You're not going to be able to get it everywhere, so I can't really give you a brand to go after for that. T-Disc says, does anyone have a good source of KN peafowl nutrition? I feed quail, pigeon, and dove. I think between all their food and supplements, they should be covered. But is there anything else I need to know? A good source of peafowl nutrition? Is that what you're saying? I'm not sure what you're feeding them all, but chances are, if you're feeding a commercial quail food or a commercial pigeon food to them, if you're feeding the quail a commercial quail food, the pigeons a commercial pigeon food, and doves are pretty much the same thing as pigeons. I think they probably eat the same thing. Pigeons are a type of dove. So you're going to be fine. I don't think you need to really worry about it too much, but if you just want to nerd out on it, which is fine if you want to do that, you can definitely, I would do some searches for that. I don't have a good source right offhand, but do some Google searches for scientific study on quail diet, something like that. And you can find some scientific papers that will give you complete breakdowns on how much thiamine they should have, how much protein they should have, how much whatever they should have in their diets. And you can, like I said, you can nerd out on that stuff if you want to. Verna says, I called 9 quail today, have almost a dozen more to do in a couple of days. Yeah, that can get pretty busy pretty quick. I'm going to have some quail that I need to get processed and get in the freezer. I don't know if I'll get it done this weekend. I probably won't. I'll probably let them grow out another week. But yeah, I've got the same thing. I've got you've got a dozen more to do in the next couple of days. So that's I can't do the math. 21. There we go. I've got a little more than that. I probably got about 30, but it's not too bad. Emily says, Purina, not Putin, huh? Because she says Putin's is firmer than the others I have tried. Purina, not Putin. There we go. Not the Russian guy. What is he? The Russian president? I don't, anyway, doesn't matter. Boasty, I think, hopefully I'm getting that right, says, I get rid of the rooster, as if you get rid of the hen, you might find another hen to pick on. Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. It's probably the best idea to remove the rooster in that situation where the rooster is beating your hen up than it is to remove the hen. Oh, yeah, okay. Katrina's got a question for Verna. I don't know if Verna saw it and has responded. But Katrina's saying, I hope, to Verna, I hope you're well. I remember you saying we're a good place to get quail leg bands. I think that was you. In any case, do you have a good place to get them? So, yeah, I like the Putin better. Uh, Andy says, I have a Sussex chicken, and I started laying eggs, but she randomly stopped laying eggs, and it has been almost a year. Do you know what could be going on with her? Boy, I mean, a chicken stopped laying eggs, and it's been almost a year since she laid eggs. I'm not a chicken expert, I don't raise laying hens myself, so I don't know that I've ever heard of any issues that could cause them to quit laying for a whole year. It could be stress related. It could be, there's a lot of different things that could be factoring into that, but for a whole year, that seems extreme. Do you know how old she is? Because she just may be too old. Maybe she just aged out. I don't know right offhand. Oh, Verna's asking how old she is as well. Verna says, yep, get them off Amazon. And Jay Moore says, I got leg bands on Amazon. So I don't know if they're quail specific leg bands you're getting off Amazon or sorry, I got distracted by other comments. Or if they're like pigeon leg bands or what. I'm not sure. But anyway. So Jay Moore says, I took doxycycline for Lyme disease, so maybe lots of off-label uses. Well, there could be, for sure. I don't know. You guys are talking with each other, which is okay. I'm just going to skip those right now just to let you do that. Okay, there we go. Katrina says, my broody girls in my aviary is now... Oh, okay, got it. Sorry, Katrina. My broody girls in my aviary is now only one broody girl. I'm getting 3 eggs there and 4 females. I've been getting 2 eggs. We'll see what happens. I think it should be any time now. Well, nice. Yeah, I'd be curious to see. I remember you talking about that your quail went broody. So that's great. I'd like to see how the results turn out. Tim, let's see. I lost all my quail and 7 rabbits this summer due to the heat. I'm currently trying to rebuild. Hope you're staying cooler in southwest Nebraska. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's terrible. I have never lost a bird to heat. I'm curious, did you have them in full sun? Because that's the only reason I could think that you would be losing. Now, rabbits are a little bit more sensitive to that. They've got big fur coats on, especially young rabbits that aren't acclimated to that, or depending on what breed of rabbit you got, can be a little bit more, more susceptible to that. I could see that happening, but quail, it's unusual to lose them to heat, unless you let them run out of water or you've got them in full sun where the sun's just beating down on them and they're not in the shade. I keep my hutches and my rabbits all in the shade where the sun never shines directly on the hutch itself. So that's more, it's not, how do I explain this? I'm having a hard time getting my words out here. It's not where there's a roof on the hutch that provides shade to them. The roof of the hutch never gets direct sun. It's either under trees that provide shade, or it's on the north side of my house for my rabbits. So the sun's on the south side and it stays in the shade of the house. That makes a significant difference with how hot your hutch gets and how hot that could be an issue. If you've got them out in where the sun's just beating down on that hutch all day long, heating that roof up, that can make a big difference with how hot it gets in there, and that could be part of the problem. Brian says, too, slightly rednecked. I just wanted to say thank you. I binge watch your videos. Fast forward 1 year later, I have a thriving rabbitry. We haven't bought meat from the store in over 3 months. Wow, that's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. And thank you for watching the videos. I appreciate that. All right. Verna says, us quail fanatics have to help each other out. You're absolutely right. And thank you, Verna, for sharing the information that you know. Katrina, thanks for all the answers. I think you're talking to Verna. Okay, there's a whole bunch of people talking to each other, which again is fine. I'm just going to skip all that, so don't be upset if I didn't answer your comment if it started off talking to somebody else. Emily says, my cucumbers got attacked by lantern flies. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, bug problems stuck in your garden. You know what I find, though, is that now we did try something new this year. I don't have a lot of bug problems. We get bugs in our garden. We get those pests, but we also get predator bugs that do help keep them in check. So like praying mantis and some of those kinds of things. And I think a big part of that is because we don't use pesticides in there. So we're not killing off anything. You've got to have I heard somebody once explain it as you've got to have the gazelle and things before the lions will come. And, you've got to have a food source for your predator bugs. And sometimes it takes a little while to establish that. But over time, for most things like aphids, we have a ton, we have aphid problems, and we've had big problems with aphids in the past. But this year, not a problem at all. I've seen aphids. I've seen the ants trying to farm the aphids, but I also see ladybugs, lots of ladybugs out there, and they're keeping the aphid population in check. So it's not an issue. And I mean, we see aphids out there, but it's not overwhelming. We see a few tomato hornworms, but it really hasn't been a big problem with that. I don't know what their natural predator is, but something's either keeping them in check or I'm just getting lucky with those. Now, the one thing that we don't have, two things we don't have natural predators for that I haven't been able to keep in check naturally. One of those is Japanese beetles, but I put up Japanese beetle traps, and I did that for probably 3 years. And, the first year I put them up, those bags, they're the big bags where the Japanese beetle, it's got a pheromone thing that sits at the top. The beetle flies up there, falls in the bag, can't get out. And I filled those bags up like 3 or 4 times during the course of the summer. The next year it was like 2-3 times they filled up. And then the next year it was like, I barely filled the bag up at all for the whole season. And I haven't seen a Japanese beetle in the last 2 years. So I know they're probably still around, but I haven't seen one. So that took care of that problem. The other problem, I haven't been able to find a natural, I mean, it just doesn't, they don't naturally take care of themselves, is the vine borers, the squash bug, not the squash bugs, I guess, vine borers themselves in the squash plants. Usually we start getting pretty good production out of our squash plants, and then the vine borers, lay their eggs, and the larvae get in the stem of the squash plant and start just destroying it, and the leaves all wilt, and then the thing dies. Which most of the time I'm okay with, because about that time I'm sick of eating squash and zucchini. But we can freeze that stuff. We can preserve it so we can have it later in the year. I do like that stuff. It's just when it's on full production, my wife really likes it. So we're eating it like every day, and I get kind of sick of eating it every single day. But we did use BT this year on the squash, and it worked. And if you're not familiar, BT is, I can't remember what I can't remember what it is. I was going to try to say it, but I don't remember what that stands for. But it is a naturally occurring like enzyme or something like that. Anyway, specific to it only affects caterpillars and worms and those kinds of things. So what my wife did is she took a syringe and injected it in several places along the stem of that squash plant, and it took care of them. We had vine borers in there. We had them in. I mean, you could see the evidence where they had drilled holes in it, and it looks like little sawdust shavings underneath there, and the plants were starting to wilt, and she went through and injected that in several places, took care of it. We still got squash coming out, still got, so that's another thing to think about. And that's a good one to use because, like I said, it's a naturally occurring thing. It's not like a broad spectrum pesticide, chemical type thing. It works specifically on it's a bacteria is what it is. I got to look this up. I got to be able to tell you what it is. It's driving me crazy. There we go. BT is Bacillus something. Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have looked it up and tried to pronounce it. But it is a natural bacteria that is commonly found in soil. When eaten by caterpillars, the bacteria produce proteins that paralyze the caterpillar's digestive system, which causes them to stop feeding and die. So you don't want to go just crazy with this stuff because you don't want to kill every caterpillar out there. But it did work for that. All right. As far as your lantern flies, boy, I don't know what the natural predator is for them, but if you can get, if you have a big infestation of certain kinds of, pests in your garden, look up what the natural predator for them is, because you can order a lot of those things. You can order praying mantis, you can order ladybugs, and they do a fantastic job of keeping all that stuff in check. You may have to go out at night with a flashlight and a bucket of soapy water and just knock them off into the soapy water. And kind of manually control them for a little while, but hopefully you get them under control. I am leery. I don't like to use anything like 7 dust or any of that kind of stuff because that's broad spectrum. That kills everything. And it kills your beneficial bugs as well. And it's just, if you start using that stuff, you're going to always have to use that stuff to keep it in check. Whereas if you don't, like I said, most of the time you're going to find a natural predator that moves in and keeps, whatever insect pest you have in check. And sometimes you got to, it's a little bit tough for a year or two, but then eventually they do move in and they do start taking care of things. All right. Northern Pike says, any advice on cages inside a building with polyfabric mesh? Will quail chew on it? No, they shouldn't chew on it. You shouldn't have to worry about that at all. Quail are not bad about chewing on things or picking on all those kinds of things. It's not a big deal. They don't really have any teeth either, so they can't really chew on it. I think it's going to be fine. Katrina says, my Shire Farm did a video recently on quail food after talking to a bunch of experts. I remember that video. It was a pretty interesting video. And they recommended a lot of things that, I do it totally different, and that's okay. I remember them talking about, we'll see, Verna goes on to say, my Shire Farm, there's a video called All About Feed that answers the scientific needs for quail feed. Yep, there is. And I think that's I think he even says in his video that, like, this is not something you have to follow exactly, because his, what he is doing there is a little bit different than what we're doing in his backyard. What I'm doing, I should say, because some of you guys may be a little bit bigger operations, but what I'm doing is just a backyard. I just raise quail in my backyard for meat and eggs. So I'm not worried about, producing the absolute biggest eggs and the best possible birds. I'm not selling them. That's not my business. So I'm just worried about producing some meat and eggs for my family and doing it pretty easily. So what I find, he recommended, I think they're experts anyway, recommended that you move them to was it a 20% protein after 3 weeks or something? I can't remember exactly. I don't do that. I feed mine the highest protein I can get, 30% protein. And that's what they get from the time they hatch out of the egg till the time they're in the freezer. It doesn't matter if they're 2-year-old birds, 3-year-old birds, or whatever. But I find I get the best results feeding that high protein feed to my birds. But again, that's not the only way to do it. You can definitely follow what their experts said, and you're going to get great results out of that too, probably. Leo says, do rabbit eats the child when they dead? Okay. They can, yes. That's a fairly common thing that happens whenever a mammal of any kind has babies that die. You're usually there's a natural instinct they have to want to clean that up and not draw predators and scavengers and things like that into their nest. It's unusual for them to do that, but it's not unheard of. It could definitely happen. All right. A girl named Chester says, I just coming into this, first time I've been able to catch one of your live. Glad to be here. Well, I'm glad you're here too. Thank you for joining. How are we doing on time? My goodness, like I said, it always rushes away. We only got about 7 minutes left. All right, there's somebody talking to somebody else. Leo says, my bunny had 3 and 1 died. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Leo. It happens sometimes. It's not much you can do about it. Kathleen says, I ordered the leg bands on eBay. There you go. Southern Okie says, good evening. I recently processed my first batch of quail this week, and it went pretty good. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And well done. Hey, there's the Elders Homestead. Says, I'm amazed at how mean a hen can be to another hen. I had to dispatch both the injured and the hen who did it. Yeah, most of the time I find when I get aggressive birds, they're usually hens. The males are, sometimes you'll get an aggressive male, but usually what looks like aggression is actually just breeding. He's just overly anxious with breeding, if that makes sense. But the hens can get vicious and they peck at the eyes, and it's terrible. Ed Got Bait says, hey, sorry I'm late, watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer with the wife. Okay. All right. It's okay. You don't have to make excuses. Watch whatever you want to watch. Verna says, yes, they are quail. They are the smallest leg bands. There we go. Okay, good. Big D says, Big D Mike says, I lost my green thumb this year. My maters produced late and they will not get ripe. So it's fried green maters for us. Yummy. Oh, I can't stand fried green tomatoes. My grandpa loved them, and my grandma made him green tomato pie every year. It's the most disgusting thing ever. Cannot stand green tomatoes. Ugh. Anyway, I'm glad you're enjoying them. You can, tomatoes will ripen up if you just set them on your season shouldn't be over yet, should I? Think you're in New York, aren't you? It's not getting cold there yet, is it? You should be able to leave them on the vine for quite a while longer. Yeah, my tomatoes started late too. We had a late start to the season for sure. But you can pull those green tomatoes off, put them in a windowsill or whatever, and they'll ripen up. All right, Northern Pike says, anybody got advice on cages inside a building with polyfabric? Okay, I think we already answered that. Kathleen says, I bought small chick size bands. Okay, there you go. And Jay Moore says, pigeon bands fit fine. Interesting. Oh, Verna's got a good point to Northern Pike. Says it's not advisable as weight will cause it to stretch and cause problems. Okay, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a good point. If you're talking polyfabric mesh on on the walls, on the sides, that's probably okay. You don't want to use that as your flooring for sure. No, that's not a good idea. It'd be like putting your birds on just a trampoline basically. They're walking all over, all the time. Emily says, I put an old chicken fan in my garage for my rabbits. Well, that's a good idea too. There's nothing wrong with that. Ventilation and airflow is good. Leo says, what kind of bush to give your rabbits? So I think you're meaning like what kinds of vegetables and things can you give them? Yeah, you pretty much want to stay away from giving them large quantities of garden vegetables, tomatoes. Don't give them lettuce. You could some spinach and broccoli and some of those kinds of things are okay, but in small amounts. If you're wanting to feed your rabbits like naturally, I would highly recommend getting a book called Beyond the Pellet. It's a great source of looking that up, but you're going to be feeding them things like wheat, barley, or wheat fodder, barley fodder. They eat more like grasses and things like that, but you're going to need to look into it a little bit. It's too much for me to be able to answer right here. There's a whole list of things that you can feed them and you can't feed them. More so that you can than you can't. There's not that many things you need to stay away from. I will tell you, do stay away from, don't feed tomato plants or potato plants or anything in the nightshade family, peppers, none of those plants. Don't feed those to your rabbits. They can have the fruit, the tomato fruit, but they don't feed them the plant itself. King Polo says, do you take your rabbits to the vet or do you try only house remedies? No, I don't take my rabbits to the vet. It's prohibitively expensive to do so. I don't really have any problems with my rabbits beyond things that I can treat myself anyway, like ear mites. And I only have two. I have a breeder buck and a breeder doe. I'm just breeding to produce some meat for the family. So it's not, I don't have show quality rabbits. I'm not a huge rabbitry that's producing rabbits for sale. So I don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. If I have a rabbit that gets sick and I can't treat it with a home remedy, I quarantine it. If it gets bad enough, I will dispatch the rabbit to put it out of its misery, and I'll buy a new rabbit. That's the way that I kind of handle things. That sounds terrible, but to take a rabbit to the vet is hundreds of dollars, incredibly expensive, and rabbits are pretty sensitive. So most of the time, if they get sick enough where they need to go to the vet, it's going to be hard to treat them and bring them back to complete health, if that makes sense. So yeah, the only problems I ever have with my rabbits is they get ear mites, and that's just a little bit of oil in their ear, any kind of food grade oil, a few drops in their ear a couple of times a day for a week or two, and that takes care of those. Okay, there's somebody talking to Brian. Emily says most rabbit vets will charge huge amounts for minimal issues. I agree. And Verna says on Amazon, type in quail leg bands. And Julie, how are we doing on time? Oh boy, just a minute or two left. I'm not going to get to everybody, unfortunately. Let's see how fast I can go. Julie says 10 button eggs laid once. Again, the birds only sit on them for 1 or 2 days and then abandon them. That's pretty common with domestic quail, especially if you're keeping them in a cage and not like a big aviary, open aviary type thing. So yeah, you're probably going to have to incubate them yourself if you want them to hatch. Jasmine says, I use tiny zip ties as leg bands on just my jumbo white males so I can easily tell them apart in the aviary. I haven't had any issues with them. That's a good idea. Chad says, hey, Chris, I put 4 eggs in my incubator. They are jumbo quails. They were all good up to day 14 because I accidentally stopped turning them on day 14 and day 17. One hatched, the rest didn't. Why? There's so many factors that go into that. I don't know that I can tell you why. You see you put 4 in there. You stopped turning on day 14. That shouldn't have had any effect on them. That's about right. Day 14 is about the day you want to stop turning. Day 17, 1 hatch. That's right on time. Why the other 3 didn't hatch, I couldn't tell you. Did you leave them in there for several more days to see if they were going to hatch? Because it's not uncommon for you to get a handful of birds that hatch on day 17, 18, and then some that start hatching on day 19, 20, 21, or 22 even. So the first thing to look at is your incubator temperature. Make sure that it's reading temperature correctly, but there's just too many factors that go into that. I don't know that I can answer that one for you, unfortunately. Jay Moore says, I use a lot of mesh in bird netting in the garden and berry bushes, some safe fungicide, insecticide mesh bags for spaghetti squash, and dehydrate extra zucchini. Yeah, there's a good idea. You could dehydrate it for sure. I think we're going to flash freeze it and then just freeze it in Ziploc, or not Ziploc, food saver bags, vacuum sealer bags. All right. Jay Moore says, I've been playing with humidity all day at lockdown. It's hard to regulate. 4 hydrometers, all different. Yeah, don't stress over that too much. As long as it's not like over 80% and it's above like 60%, you're probably going to be fine. It'll drive you crazy trying to regulate it and keep track of it. Just don't worry about it too much. Humidity is not as important as temperature. All right, I got to wrap this up, guys. There's too many comments going on, and I can't get to them all. I'm sorry. I would stay here all night, but I got to go to work in the morning. I still got to have dinner, spend some time with my wife, all those good things. So if I didn't get to your comment tonight, I apologize for that. Thank you guys all for joining me tonight. Hopefully we'll see many of you at QuailCon coming up in 1 month from today, September 5th. So hopefully we'll see you guys there. Anyway, have a good evening. We will see you guys on the next live broadcast. Should be next week. And as always, God bless.